All right, so this is going to be the evening meeting for the Appalachian Authors Guild. This is April 9th, 2026. And tonight we're going to talk about short story writing. Just before we get into the topic, I did want to just sort of let's just do a quick round table. Just everybody introduce themselves to people that are maybe watching on YouTube. See this a little later on. Can we start up in the corner with Susan, and then we'll just go around the table?
Hi, I'm Susan Dickinson, Bristol, Virginia.
And you're working on your first novel now, right? So,
First novel now.
yeah. All right, let's jump over to Peggy. Peggy, what novel have you written, and how long have you been with the Guild?
I've been with the Guild, I guess, 2 years. I wrote one novel and I'm working on short stories now, so I'm looking forward to this discussion.
How about you, Carrie?
Carrie Kilgore in Wise County, Virginia. Um, could not tell you how long I've been with the Guild. A few years?
Longer than me. Yeah, I've been there for quite
Uh,
a while too.
since before 2020. But time breaks down at that point. Um, and I have written hundreds of short stories and am working on a Kickstarter right now that will focus on a short story collection of mine. So yeah, it's definitely been a focus for me.
All right, and how about you, Linda?
My name is Linda Dobkins. I now live, actually, and my pen name is Joe Allison, more importantly. Um, I now live in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I have been a member of the Guild, I believe, for 12 years. And one time, long, long ago, was on the board, and so I was quite active and sort of got lost during COVID when we could no longer meet in person. And of course, now I've moved away, and I'm very thankful, therefore, that we have an evening edition that we can where I can tune in. As far as short stories go, that I'm just not good at them. I have tried and tried, and I'm not good at writing short stories. So I write long shit. So
Hopefully, what we talk about will be helpful tonight.
maybe, yes, yes.
How about you, Crockett?
Well, I hope so.
I am Crockett Kinzer. I think I've been with the guild now, I think about a year and a half now. And short stories I've always like used to write just in school for fun. And I'm working on my first like real in-depth one now. So yeah, that's short and
So,
simple.
yeah, so looking forward to reading your stuff. Jason, how about you? What's your book out, and tell us a bit about you.
I'm Jason Houghton. I live in Abington. I've written one self-published book, a bunch of short stories throughout the anthologies. I'm currently working and perfecting a shopping list while my laptop is being fixed, and I hope to have that done before this weekend. No, it. When I get my laptop back, I'll be able to dive back into the this dark fiction and that I'm writing and some of the kid stories that I'm also writing.
So we've
Thank you.
so the Guild is expecting to hopefully get enough short story submissions that we can put another anthology out this year. Carrie? Oh yeah, okay.
Everybody, I'm Jason Adams. I'm also in St. Paul, obviously.
Wise
Uh,
County.
Wise County, written a whole bunch of short stories, and I'm here to make everyone else's hair look better. Um, but yeah, I love short stories because you can start with just sometimes just a title that sounds like a lot of fun. Um, Sometimes just this one specific idea in this one specific person's life right now is a lot of fun, and sometimes you can get away with so much more in a short story. I mean, I have a short story that I sold to a magazine that's about a guy that fell into a vat of hummus and then the hummus sold out the next day. I mean, this is the kind of thing you can get away with in a short story.
Oh
So I
yeah.
love short stories.
Well, he's basically he would be a short story specialist. That's what he does. He's
Yeah.
written one
Yeah.
novella, whereas I've also written a whole bunch of longer fiction. So we approach it a little
Yeah.
differently. But
I've
I
got I've got the ADD, the shiny wears off if I'm trying to
Yeah.
do the long
Yep.
thing.
Short story writing and novel writing are very, very different. Again,
Yes.
the approach is night and day. Um, and just I guess I'll introduce myself. I forgot to do that. JC Schweingruber. I'm VP of the Guild, Appalachian Authors Guild, and I've got a little street cred. I've got 2 compilations of short story books out under the name Cyrus Alderwood. So you can find all of our works on Amazon and at different locations. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna share screen for a moment. Let me find my share screen. And all right, here we go. So let me blow this up. So this is the craft of the short story. I wanted to talk about what great writers have taught us about fiction over the decades, centuries, even, I guess. Um, and the first one I wanted to start out with was this cat, Edgar Allan Poe. Uh, I guess we've all read stories about this guy. Anybody, just out of chance, any have a favorite story of his? And we all don't have to jump in at once. All right, maybe we won't. um, One of them I really liked was the Telltale Heart, but he is the whole host of short stories. And as I was reading about him, he kept being referred to as the inventor of the modern short story theory, which is to write a story that's readable in one sitting, that aims for one emotional effect, and starts he started writing with the end in mind, and that's pretty interesting thought. I come across that with several different writers, but let me jump over to Jason and um, and Carrie and well, anybody else that's written short stories. Have you, when you start writing your short stories, do you have an ending in mind when you start? Do you kind of
Never,
go by the Poe theory?
never, never.
I wrote a
Okay.
short story that started with sometimes an old dog's nose is the only warning you get of what walks between the walls of the world. That I had the first line just popped into my head, and the whole story came from that. I had no idea where it was going, no idea what was going to happen. I just had that first line and ran
Okay.
with it.
And sometimes if we're aiming for a certain genre, like it's an anthology call that needs to be a holiday romance or science
Hmm.
fiction adventure, that might narrow it a little, but otherwise,
Well,
nope.
that's starting with one emotional effect, right? Like Poe would talk about. That's one thing you can do, is to start with one emotional effect. But his was always terror, suspense. Like you kind of felt bottled up sometimes reading some of his stories. Just that this emotion you get from it. Um, oh well, that's it. So the next slide here, Poe believed the story should aim for a single emotional impact. So Jason, when you write, do you have like an emotional goal in mind, even if you don't have an ending? Do you think,
It,
okay, I
de-
want this as suspense or terror or
Again, it
comedy or
depends. If I'm writing for writing a romance, well, it's going to be a happily ever after. Um,
Right? That's an exception. Romance is absolutely an exception. Yes.
yeah, you
I
may
would
not know
say that
how
would
it'll
have
get
to
there,
be.
but you know that the two main characters are going to end up at least first kiss, or the promise of a first date. Uh, but if you're talking about a crime story,
Yeah,
I may
you're
know
going
what
to get suspense all day.
yeah, I may know what
Maybe.
I may know what the crime is, but I may not know how it's going to be solved until I get there. If I'm surprised when I'm writing it, chances are good the reader's going to be surprised when they're reading it.
And I will say crime is a very good example that you have an ending in mind that order needs to be imposed on chaos.
Right, right.
You don't know how, or I don't know how the order is going to be imposed on chaos. You may or may not catch the thief, but it still may be resolved in some manner. So crime, along with romance, has a sort of ending in mind.
Yeah. And that too,
From our experience, everybody's
yeah.
different.
And with a crime story, it depends on what subgenre of crime you're writing and who your audience is. But I like crime stories where justice is served. That doesn't necessarily mean bad guys go to jail. I mean, you look at the Jack Reacher books, and there are
Uh-huh.
no good guys in those books.
Right.
But justice is served according to Jack Reacher's rules. Justice is served. You may not agree, but they operate within the rules of the character and the world. So yeah, I mean, and science fiction,
It can go all over the place.
yeah, science
Yeah.
fiction setting,
Doesn't
it's
doesn't have to have happy ending even.
yeah. Science fiction is just setting. I mean, Star Wars is a
Mhm.
Western. straight
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
But with science fiction trappings around it. So,
Fantasy.
Oh yeah.
Star
Yeah.
Wars is fantasy. But
yeah,
anyway.
Star Wars is fantasy. Yes, it is.
Yeah,
But
but
F field and light speed.
with somebody like Poe though, who focuses on the macabre, yeah, I can see how this method would work well for him. You have that emotional goal, that tear, because in the notes down here I put the telltale heart creates claustrophobic madness, and he sort of worked that psychological angle. Um, and he did a great job when you read some of his short stories about every scene, the imagery is so gray and dark and just full of malaise, almost like a hopeless feel when you read some of his work. Um, and that imagery really works well in short stories. I think the imagery, because you don't have a whole novel to work with, you have a certain amount of space to work with. Imagery takes a vital role, I think, in telling a good short story. And Poe really, I guess, one of the early masters of this craft doing it. Let me go down to the next one here. You guys heard of O. Henry, right? Sidney Porter, uh, Gift of the Magi. So he was another person that, as I was doing some research on short story writers that popped up, early part of the 20th century, early 1900s, the twist ending. So this guy was credited with creating the twist ending, and the Gift of the Magi, which I'm sure we all read in high school, was just a good example of that. But what a cool pen name, O. Henry. Yeah, William Sidney Porter. I would go for a different pen name if my name was that. But O. Henry's pretty cool. His advice was clever plotting, and the plot wasn't just what happens; it's how information's arranged. The story should efficiently move toward a specific outcome, and it was incumbent on us as writers to guide the reader's assumptions without them really realizing. And to do so, he suggested hiding true meaning in plain sight. And he stressed that the writer controls what the reader thinks is happening. Maybe not what's really happening, but what they think is happening. And I haven't read a whole lot of his work, but The Gift of the Magi was one that obviously popped up. And here's this is a little interesting, and this is, I guess, where you guys have written short stories. Let me pick your brain on this too. He actually worked backwards. Started with the ending first, which I've never really done, but he imagined the twist ending, and he constructed events that would lead to it logically. So I could kind of like see the method of like, hey, I want it to end this way, and so it twists, you don't see what happens, and then sort of go back to, like if you're a detective, kind of going back to explain something. But writing that seems like that would be incredibly taxing. If you didn't sort of have that whole movie or that short story in mind to begin with. Yeah, what are your all's thoughts on something like that?
Actually, that's how I prefer to write a short story. I have a plot twist at the end, and I like to construct a way to get there.
Jason, that reminds me, when you, for the last anthology we did, it was a holiday when you wrote the Arbor Day story. Who would have thought? But
Right.
that was really clever. So you thought of the ending before you started the beginning?
Yeah, I wanted to. The dad was always going to be buried at the tree, and it was going to be in his adult life that it was revealed. So I had to take it from him in fourth grade planting a tree to the big reveal to his life to his wife at the end of his life that, hey, the tree that our life has been around. My dad is buried at the base of it, and that was the twist, and I wrote backwards from there, or plotted backwards from there.
Okay.
So that's how I like going about short stories. Even the even for the Golden Nib, I like the plot twist at the end, and then work plotting backwards from there.
Okay. Anyone else try that? Linda Dopkins, how about yourself? You're mute. There you go.
Yeah. The very few stories that I've written, I probably did know how they were ending. I don't know if I used misdirection very well or not, but it's a good point to think about
Well,
doing that.
one of the things that you've done well in the series that I've read is was it Bread and Roses? Bread and Roses was that the title?
Yes, that's
You
wonderful. Yeah.
that was really I think you did a clever job. I wouldn't necessarily say a twist ending, but I sort of didn't see it coming because you had different angles that that story could have worked with at the end, and the whole Julie and I series. I've read I think three of them now out of those books, and your endings are always sort of yeah. I kind of didn't expect that, you know. You can see that, but it wasn't like necessarily a full twist, but it was, but they're really creative. Um, and when you look back, there are little subtle clues that sort of lead to it, but you kind of didn't see them because I think maybe, and I haven't really thought about this much, but I suppose you've done a good job of that misdirection in the writing, making the reader think one way when you're drawing them another way, and they don't realize it yet. So that's really clever writing. Very difficult to do. Um,
Actually, to be very honest, in the case of Bread and Roses, I had several possible perps in mind, and they all convinced me they didn't do it.
yeah,
So that's why it may feel like a surprise ending at the end. It was sort of a surprise to me as I was writing it. You know, if you just can have fun with your characters, sometimes they tell you things, you know, if you can develop them.
and
So
I think that's part of the strength of writing, whether it's novels or short stories, having fun with the characters. Because if you feel that way about your characters, your reader's going to pick up on that, and they're going to enjoy those characters too. It's amazing what
yeah.
readers pick up on the subtle things. So if we're not really into a character or to a backstory, they know it. Yeah, I mean, they
Mhm.
don't know, but they sense it, and readers are
Right.
smart.
Right.
I think sometimes I mean, I try to give readers the benefit of the doubt that they're going to be smart to know something, that's built in. Peggy, what are your thoughts?
I don't know. This short story I'm working on now, I have the story. Yeah, I know what I want to write, and I've kind of written it, but I don't know where I want to end. I don't know. It's the story of an abused child. So I don't know. Right now, I've got it so the adults aren't picking up on the clues. And I have the end of the story is despondent because nobody's helping him. And I think that's where I want to leave it. But yet, I don't want to leave it there. But that is where a lot of kids end up. Without any help, nobody comes to the rescue.
Yeah, and that's another thing about short stories. I think that it's worth talking about because they don't always have to have happy endings. They don't always have to have an ending. Period. Um, I know some people like to have a nice story, wrapped up nice and tight with a happy ending and all that, but that's not life. And I
No,
think with short stories we can get away with that because first of all, we don't have to have fully developed and very complicated backstories. It's just enough to keep the reader um, engaged in one sitting.
well, right now, I don't know if I'm going to do it, but right now it starts when the girl is 15 and she's run away from home and she's in a terrible situation. And I don't spend a lot of time describing it, but you get that image. And then it goes to a flashback when she's in school and she's got all the signs, but nobody has time to help her. And then I think that's where it's going to end.
Is this one for the anthology or just for you?
It might be, I don't know. It's just a
Okay.
short story right now. I don't know what I'm
Okay.
going to do.
Okay. But that's Jason. That's kind of clever to work backwards.
Yeah.
But let's go on to the next guy. Carrie, you know all about this guy, Stephen King. We wake up horrors to help us cope with the real ones. That's pretty true. I do love a good, powerful quote from a good writer. and that's one that sticks out. And Stephen King, there is no lack of videos online of him giving writing advice. He is blunt as I'll get out, and I don't think he cares if he comes across as harsh. But a lot of what he says is sort of necessary. But then this is kind of from that book on writing. Carrie, we talked about that before. I love this quote from him. I start with a situation and then ask myself, what would these people do? Yeah,
A character in a setting with a problem.
that's the beginning of any story.
Absolutely. Yes. And keep in mind, I mean, a lot of people do start with the end or what they want to achieve. But remember, if we're riding along and you're like on the 300 or 3000th word and you realize, oh, this is what I need, you can go back to the first page and add it.
Yeah.
You're allowed to cycle through. You're the master of your universe.
Yeah.
You don't have to write straight through.
Yep.
So that's
And people will ask, well, how did you know to put that gun on the mantelpiece on page 2? I did that around page 40. Realized I needed the gun on the mantelpiece.
and yes, Stephen King is my favorite short story writer. There's several others. Gosh, Joyce Carol Oates and Christine Catherine Rush,
Philip K. Dick.
Philip K. Dick, Anne McCaffrey wrote some great short stories.
Yeah.
But yes, Stephen King he wrote my very favorite short story, and he's my favorite short story
You're
writer.
talking about Edgar Allan Poe and the feelings of dread and everything.
Yeah.
The Yellow Wallpaper.
The Yellow Wallpaper.
Charlotte Gilman.
Ooh.
That's a great one for mood. Oh my goodness.
I have to check that one out.
Oh,
Now-
and
Public domain, you can get it anywhere.
The Lottery, Shirley
Oh
Jackman.
yeah.
Woo, Shirley Jackson wrote some great ones too.
So I know, I love what you said there. A character and a situation, beginning of any great story. Peggy, I noticed when we do our writing prompt challenges on the weekly, you come up with some great, interesting settings. Like, I mean, because with prompts, you're just kicked off right into it. You're right in the middle of the explosion, basically. And we've used photos, pictures, stock
Yeah.
photos we found on the web. And one that I thought was really interesting, you chose the cavalry, the horse cavalcade. And I thought, okay, we looked at that and it's like, all right, we're going to have to do a prompt off that. And I thought that was really interesting because you were really right into the story and, the character. And sometimes we've been talking about the character is the setting a lot of times too. So whether it's a parade or a ballpark or whatever, down here in the bottom, I took some notes down here in the bottom of this, looking at what Stephen King said here, what this means for short stories. Like Carrie said, begin with a compelling premise. Let character decisions, good or bad, drive the story. The bad ones are the best ones. They make the best stories. When you make a bad decision, that's when sort of like all hell breaks loose. And it makes for fun prompts. It makes for fun short stories. And by all means, avoid over plotting up front. Let the scene dictate, the surroundings, the environment dictate, the story where it can kind of go. I mean, not dictate, but like be a major part of it so that you don't have to go back and explain to the writer how you got there. Or explain to the reader how you got there. I think that's when you sort of lose a reader. I've read enough short stories and I've gotten a few paragraphs in. It's like, not really into it. And then some that grab you from like the first sentence, like Jason was talking about. You pick the craziest thing you can think of, and that phrase sticks with you. And then, well, how do you not read after that? How do you not give that at least a couple of pages to see where that one's going? But On Writing is, I think, one of the greatest books on short story writing and writing in general, and come from Stephen King and all his blunt glory. So if you're watching this, it's a great book to pick up if you're new to it. Here's some advice from the guy. Write with the door closed. I do that. I don't like anything else outside of this box I'm in. The first draft should be uninterrupted, instinctive, and not over edited. That's one thing I love about our writing prompts, Peggy. We don't edit. We just like, hey, here's the rough, just raw, whatever came out for 30 minutes. Here, read it, have fun. For short stories, he said draft quickly in one or two settings if you can. capture the emotional core of the story first, and fix structure later. There'll be plenty of time for that after you get the story down on paper. So I think that's pretty standard for any writer. It's not really any kind of theory like Poe, but it's about, if we're going to be a writer, sit down and write. That's what writers do. One of the things that he mentioned, and this was in a video I watched, and I read this at Hemingway had said too, was as I lost my train of thought there. But as far as just capturing the story, I lost my thought. Never mind. I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, draft quickly in 1 or 2 sittings if you can. I think that's pretty important to do with a short story. Because if you don't, it could change over time. If you come in 3, 4, 5 days in a row working on a short story, it's just, you sort of lose your train of thought. I guess the magic you had when you first sat down. So when you guys write short stories, how long does it take you?
That completely depends. If I'm on a good roll, I can get 4 or 5,000 words in a day, and sometimes that's a short. My short stories tend to be 5 to 10,000 words.
Okay, so like we're looking at like small novellas, really.
Well,
10,000 or so. Well, I know there's a
actually,
rule. They're breaking the rules.
there is a
here,
rule, and because I'm doing a novelette collection right now, I can tell you exactly what it is. If you get to 15,000 words, you're in novella territory.
Okay.
It's that 15,000 is generally the cutoff. So, but it depends on what you're wanting to do with them.
Yeah.
If you're doing your own collections, like we do, whatever
Do
length
whatever.
works.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Tell
I
the
tend to
story
write
till the story's
35.
told.
But Arthur C. Clarke wrote a story that I think was around 2,000 words, maybe a little less.
Less.
And he started with the ending because the whole story was just an excuse for him to make a joke about the Star-Mangled Spanner.
Star-Mangled Spanner. It's a lovely little short story by Arthur C. Clarke.
The wrench is the only thing left over after the spaceship blew up.
Give the whole thing away.
Peggy, how long does it take you to, I guess when you sit down to do a prompt, some of our prompts turn out to be 3, 4, 5 pages. So when I say a writing prompt, we're not doing like 4 or 5 paragraphs. Usually it's a couple of pages at least. How long does it take you when you sit down to do a prompt?
Well, it depends on how it's going. But I try to sit down and write totally, but I don't. I mean, I get the 3 prompts and I'll usually immediately start something with the setting.
Okay.
And then I'll go away and leave it and I'll think about it through the day and then I'll come back.
Okay. Yeah, I tend to do the same. It's sort of the same thing. I get the document set up and I put the 3 prompts and type them down. And then, then I get up and leave because I leave that document open because I know it's going to bug me until I get back and sit down and do it. So that's sort of my, self-punishment to like go in there and write. But then I'll just kind of think about it a little bit during the course of the day, and then I'll come in and spend 30 minutes or whatever. Now, Jason, I was going to ask you, when you wrote the short story on the Arbor Day, how long did that take you? Was this a couple of sittings or 2 or 3?
I wrote it in 1 day, and then the editing took about 2 days.
Okay.
Because when I go through and edit, I like changing words, and then obviously my grammar on the first draft sucks, so I had other people read it.
Every first draft is horrible. Like everything I've ever done, it's like I didn't like it.
And then word choice, I like picking words that are better than in the first draft. Just changing the change on the words, changing from penny words to nickel or dime words here and there, just sprinkling them in. But that's just me.
Now, Stephen King actually had a one short story collection. I remember because I think it was the first one I ever bought from him was Full Dark, No Stars. Great bunch of stories. So if you're looking for something in the horror genre, that's other than what I want to show you in a bit. Other than that, that's a great one to start with. So, Linda, I've been dying to show this picture all week. Hemingway. I love this quote. There is nothing to writing. All you do is sit down at a typewriter and bleed. I don't know. Do you ever have quotes like that just like get you right in the feels, Linda?
At any given moment, I have little post-it notes all over my laptop of quotes that at the moment are helpful that for whatever piece of the craft I'm working on. But this one from Hemingway always um I've seen that many times, and I have always sort of bought into it and thought that, writing, you'll find many people that say writing is hard work. And just here lately, I read something from some book coach that, I get these newsletters all the time, who said that's the wrong approach. That you really, it's fun. It ought to be fun. It's not easy, but just to focus on how hard it is, there's a part of your brain that will, shoot out the wrong chemicals if you say that. You should, I mean, we do this because it's fun, you know, and and I understand where Hemingway was coming from with that quote, but I've been trying to work on that here lately. It's fun, and if I'm not having fun doing it, then the question is, why am I doing it? So that's my take on that quote.
I love the quote over here because it reminds me. It's one of the hardest things to do is pour your heart and soul out onto something because you feel vulnerable at that point, and just as any human would. And Carrie, we've talked about this about being brave in your writing, okay? And where I'm sort of skittish at times. I'll admit it. But when I see this quote, this reminds me: open up your soul and pour it out, JC. It's okay to bleed onto the page because that's the best work. That's the most honest work that people will read. It doesn't always have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be everything everybody likes, but at least it's going to be honest, and readers will appreciate that. So when it comes to like some dramatic story or some piece that has a lot of like a powerful emotion, that's where I sort of, I tend to not draw on my own experiences when I should. But that's what this quote does for me. But he had a theory, his writing style for these, the iceberg theory, also called the theory of omission. It's the idea that only a small portion of the story should be directly stated, while the deeper meaning is strongly implied. And this is down at the bottom. We only see the surface, but the real meaning is underneath. He felt that this style strengthened the story and had maximum impact on the reader. We've all seen that picture where you have like this iceberg sticking out of the water, but then you see down below the water, it's like this huge. You only saw like the tip of the iceberg where the phrase comes from. And that's sort of what he did with his style. Why the iceberg method works. I really liked a lot of what he said here. So it's perfect for short stories, maximum meaning with minimal words. Keeps the readers engaged. They have to interpret and participate in the story when it's not overtly explained to them, but subtly explained to them. It feels more real. In real life, people don't explain themselves fully. They hide emotions and speak indirectly. And that brought me to how he applied this method. And here's this first point I want to kind of kick around everybody to discuss. When you're writing a short story, do you like to know your character's full backstory even if you don't use it? Do you write a short bio? No.
Nope, not at all. They'll tell me if it's relevant to the story.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I know if I know everything there is to know about the story and the characters, why write it? I already know it. I write so I can find out.
Yeah.
I always do. When I do a short story, I write like a short bio, a little half page of who the character is, stuff that never gets into the book, but it impacts the way I think about the character. So that's why I tend to do it. And then, another reason I just always sort of felt this way, whether it's right or wrong, was that if I didn't know the character fully, and their intentions, their even a bit of a background, even if it's just like a made up college they went to or what they studied or whatever, if I didn't have like some sort of background to kind of understand their purpose or emotion or whatever's propelling them in the story, if I didn't understand that and couldn't get that out through the writing, the reader would sort of pick up on that, maybe subtly. But if I didn't understand that character, I wouldn't be able to write that character as well as I should. So that's sort of one reason why I do it. Hemingway said remove explicit emotions and explanations. I don't know if that's works for everybody, but I think some leaving those in there sometimes, maybe all the explanation, let that be inferred. But would you agree with removing explicit emotions?
Romance writer says no.
Well, Linda, what about in some of your writings with the Julie and I mean, there's a lot of explicit emotions that come out in some of those characters in the discussions.
Well, yeah, there's some. I think you have to unpack that a little bit. The emotions may be explicit. I think what I've always taken that to mean, if you read Hemingway, is that don't say. I mean, it's sort of a show don't tell thing. That you do not want to say somebody is sad, somebody's whatever, but you show that through through their reactions. And there's always the old advice to not over explain. So I think that's what it means. And when you read Hemingway, it's a very sparse sort of writing, so I can imagine that he would say that. But the explicit emotions they may be explicit, but that doesn't mean you tell them, that there's I think a difference there.
Yeah, I'm gonna pop back up to a couple slides ago. Let me see if I had some notes down here. Yeah, this is one of the things I wanted to mention. There was a short story, and I read this again not so long ago. The story Hills Like Elephants. Has everyone read this?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You have these two people sitting there. They're in Spain. They're waiting on a train. And it just seems like a regular conversation between this man and woman. But there's a deeper meaning, and it's very powerful and very, I guess, incredibly controversial for that time, is what I wrote in the notes here. And from what they're talking about whether she should have an abortion or not, but they never mention it. It's like the undertone of that conversation. The reader feels the emotional weight without being told. They're talking about an abortion, but they're not talking about an abortion. You know what I mean? So it's, if you've read the short story, you'll see that. I missed it the first time I read it, and then I went back and I was like, okay, and then because I think probably I was reading a little too fast, but that was, I think, a very powerful way of using that iceberg method. All that underneath is really welling up to that tip at the top, and I think that was absolutely a masterpiece, if you ask me, on how to use that, and what a powerful story. And this is again what he does. He lets the setting carry the meaning, and he trusts the readers to connect. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to mention that that's a perfect example of that short story. No explicit emotion. It's mainly conversation.
Yeah.
And I would be surprised that very many people at all understand it the first time, because it's so short and it's so crisp. Talk that you do tend to hurry through it. I mean, you just read it like a little children's book with just dialogue.
Yeah, it's and you don't really, but but like you said, I mean, just no explicit emotions. You wouldn't, but how powerful was that as a story? It was just incredible. So his advice was just leave most of the story beneath the surface. Trust the reader to connect the dots. They'll get it. He was criticized a lot for using simple language. A lot of writers at the time thought use bigger words. Stretch your vocabulary, and he was just like, no, I want people to read this, not get confused reading it. So he was sort of kind of pushing against the grain of what I guess the literary community wanted, and he ended up being the literary community 10 years later, which I thought was a pretty incredible story of his. Write from real experiences whenever possible. So I thought, just, if you guys ever want to do a writing challenge or whatever, down here in the notes, I put writing prompt. Two people are having a conversation about something important, but they never say what it is. That would be incredibly challenging. And I love this famous piece of advice of his. I've got this on a little poster somewhere around here. Write the truest sentence that you know. So for each of us, I mean, and anybody watching, what is the truest sentence that you know? Maybe that's a great place to start for your next story or book. The truest sentence that you know. I don't know. Great quote there too. What do you think about Peggy and Linda when you think about the truest sentence? Like what does that mean? What do you think he means by that? I'm asking people smarter than me. I'm trying to figure it out.
You picked the wrong person. But I would think it would matter on what your topic is. Like the truest sentence I know about, adolescence is not the truest sentence I know at my stage in life now. And the truest sentence I know when I'm afraid is not the same as the truest sentence I know when I'm safe. But I think I don't know, but I read that to mean the truest sentence that you know for this purpose.
When you look at stories like Stand by Me, right? Remember, the Stephen King story, the movie. I can't really think of a way of saying it, but to me, like, you have these kids that are growing up, they're coming of age, and once they're young, you're kind of rebellious, sort of innocent in that way. And then next thing you know, he's writing this book from the eyes of an older man, the perspective looking back at what happened. And like at one point, like you lose that sort of innocence, and that bridge there. The truest thing, if in that context, I would think is like, how dumb is it to want to grow up? Like we were all there, and it's like, I can't wait to be older and all this. No, then you get there and it's like, God, I wish I was a kid again. Like that bridge in there somewhere is such a timeless place to start a story. I love stories that kind of have that reflection, like It does the same thing, the kids going back and then years later. Summer of Night by Dan Simmons. All those kids in that school finally closes down, and then the school has, I don't know if you've ever read Summer of Night, but it's a kind of like a Salem's Lot meets Stand by Me sort of thing. It's kind of cool. It's incredibly long, but it's a really good story. I don't know. Have you guys ever read books that sort of use this method? Other writers that have used this method to perfection?
It's not my favorite. Hemingway is not my personal favorite. I mean, he passed away in 1961, so it's automatically outdated in 2026 to our modern, perceptions. And I know people go back and read Dickens and all,
and Old Man of the Sea and all that stuff. Steinbeck.
I think a lot of modern readers read for emotion. We read to inhabit another character. We read to live a different life. So, and again, none of this is prescriptive. I can't tell you how to write, you how to read any of that stuff. That's all so personal. But I know I definitely read for emotion.
Yeah.
And again, romance writer. And a horror writer too. A lot of the things I write are going to really be there emotionally.
Yeah. Susan,
we all have our own favorites. I will say my favorite short story by anybody is Mrs. Todd's Shortcut by Stephen King.
Okay. I haven't read that.
If you haven't read that one, I have been reading it routinely for 40 years. And every time I read it, I find something different. I've studied it in more than one class and done homework with it over and over again. It's just an absolutely amazing story. It's from 1985. He's only gotten better.
What's the name of it?
Mrs. Todd's Shortcut.
Okay.
It's in Skeleton Crew, I think. I think it's Skeleton Crew, the collection.
Yeah.
Jason's gonna look it up.
Okay. So Susan, I guess with all these different methods, like from Poe to Hemingway, like and Stephen King, what kind of things in the books that you've read, the way that you write, what is there any kind of particular style that you have sort of borrowed from some of these?
My mouse turned. Um, the one story that I wrote backwards was the Christmas story that I wrote. I knew that I wanted it's the do you hear what I hear or do you see what I see? I knew that I wanted the locket to be on the lamb at the end of the story, and so I put that on the lamb and wrote backwards. And I thought that was fun for that one.
Yeah,
And
it's
I just write any which way I'm feeling at the moment. That's the way I write.
That's it. That's it. That's great. That's that's awesome. Yeah, they're all different.
yeah, and yeah, and that's the thing. Like to wrap it up here, uh, finally, right? What would Cyrus Alderwood do? So, I guess as I've written quite a few short stories, like I just put down here on the bottom, my street cred, right? I've got 2 short story compilations, Dark Places and Bedtime Stories for the Terminally Afraid, and a few anthology stories. And at this point, over 200 writing prompts from this writing prompt challenge and stuff that I've put on my Substack page. So I use all of these methods, like every single one of them. There's and sometimes more than one method for a story. It's amazing how you just mishmash things together. Like we should pull from everybody. Like no sense reinventing the wheel. Sometimes starting with a theme works best. Sometimes starting with a setting or strong character. Sometimes the craziest sentence that you've ever heard of. I do like what Jason had mentioned, that with that sentence, like have a strong opening. Man, if you can grab the reader's attention, like just like that, that's awesome. It doesn't matter what kind of story it is either. The craziest opening statement ever. Just give the reader a reason to need to read more. And it's sometimes it's not that, I mean, it's simple. Whether writing the story that you're working on is very simple or not. But I always like to ratchet up the tension. You know that your character wants something, they need something really, really bad. Make the reader feel it and tighten up the tension so much that they want it to. And it has to be something that seems almost impossible to get. Works with every genre, and I've done that in comedy books. I've done that with the Gonzo Chronicles books, Pot of Gold. I did that with Revelation Calling. I did it with the Merlin book. And I did it with those short story compilations. And for those of you who haven't read any of those, and the Bedtime Stories for the Terminally Afraid, I have this story called Game, Set, and Match. And the whole theme of it was be careful what you wish for because you just might get it. And then I used the technique of what they call the turning point in the story. And that's like so common with every story. It's just, it's a revelation, a decision, or a discovery that impacts the character and changes their arc or the arc of the whole conflict and story. And that leads to one of my favorite parts of the story. I try to put some sort of twist ending. I think we all probably do at this point into every story that we write. And I think it's pretty important to do so. And so some final pointers I'll just toss out there and just leave this roundtable discussion at that point. Step 1, we need to answer these things. Who is our character? What do they want or fear? Step 2 is to unfold the conflict. Are we revealing some sort of secret? Is it some moral choice? And the setting is incredibly important. We need to use vivid and memorable spaces to get our point across. And whether it's like some lonely Appalachian town or a gas station late at night, whatever it is we're we're using, that has to enhance the feeling or dread or excitement of the story. I think those are just some things that I commonly use, and I'll kind of give away a little spoiler on the game set match. Kind of use Jason's thought when you come up with the wackiest thing you can think of and run with it. I was thinking to myself, this was a long time ago, and I thought, hey, you remember when I used to watch tennis? I loved watching tennis, and my sister, her favorite player was this Andre Agassi guy. You remember him? Long hair, and he was in all the Canon, camera commercials, all this stuff. Well, anyway, she loved that guy, and I thought this guy's more like a rock star than a tennis player because he was all over pop culture. And I thought, that's really cool. Now, what would that guy do if he got bit by a vampire?
Yeah.
How is he going to play tennis? Right? So, anyway, I have this guy in there who's the number one tennis player in the world. Everybody loves him. Paparazzi follows him. And he sees this girl in the audience. It's a night match. And he sees this girl and he's like smitten by her. I don't know. It's like he's entranced. And she ends up finding him after the game, sort of luring him to this place, this nightclub. It's this goth place, and he's not supposed to be there. And he gets sort of beat up as he tries to get in the back door because, like, hey, you're a yuppie. You're not coming in here. You don't fit with this crowd. Get out of here. Well, she finds him afterwards, and well, what he thinks happens, it really happened. It was sort of like this weird dream. He was in a trance, and she bit him. And now this guy feels like stronger than ever, faster than ever. But he has one problem. He can't go out in the daylight. So how is this guy going to? And so he finally, after everybody's like, you got to play tennis. He's like, listen, I have this rare condition. I'll play at night, but I can't play, in the daytime because my skin, I have this rare onset of something. So he comes up with this great excuse. And then he's going down to the Australian Open. And of course, he waits till nighttime. They schedule his matches late in the night, in the last part of the day. Oh man. And how that ends, I'm not gonna give it away, but like the twist ending, how this guy dies from his own stupidity. Like basically, like he's like, how did I not think of that when he knew he was dying? Anyway, yeah, the craziest premise. What would Andre Agassi do if he got bitten by a vampire? Yeah. So anyway, I thought those are some good things, and just to kind of toss this out to anybody else that's seeing this online. Yeah, I have my own little logo I made. So we've been doing this writing prompt challenge. I've been doing this for we're in the third year. Peggy's been doing this for quite a while too with us, and Jason's done some of these. They're fun. They're just fun. It doesn't have to be anything elaborate. 20 minutes, and whatever you have. So anyway, that's what I had for short story writing with some advice from some of the greats. So let's just kind of run around the circle. What are your thoughts on some of this, and what do you do in your own short stories? I'll call on Jason Houghton first. He's quiet. He's too quiet over there.
When's the class going to start? No. I took some pointers here. I understand the emotional journey stuff. See, for me, I understand how Carrie and other Jason, with the two you calling them the Jasons today got a little confusing. I almost wanted to unmute a couple times. They always intimately, and respect to them, they always intimately know their characters before pen meets paper, and I can respect that. You do to a point too, and I think that helps write their short stories. I am always going to be a plotter, and even if it's just jotting notes, I have to do that. I like the various quotes from the different people. I'm not a big Stephen King guy, but he did have some good points in there. I'm more of a Hemingway guy. And yeah, it is fun, but it is you get out your keyboard and bleed. What I do for short stories, especially, I like it. I'm a Mark Twain guy. I mean, I always wanted, from knowing Mark Twain stories, I always wanted to have that plot at the end, the twist at the end, the little spark, whatever that sends people off thinking about something different. Um, so that's why the election story, I wanted to end it with he reveals he voted for his wife. The Arbor Day story, we find out that his mom buried his dad at the tree. Or he put the tree on top of his dad's body that his mom killed. I always wanted to leave something like that, and to do that, I had to start with the ending first. And that being said, it's hard to fit an emotional roller coaster in 5,000 words or less, and which is generally what I try to do for my short stories. And I feel like I'm rambling now, so I'm going to pass it back to you.
Yeah, Susan, what are your thoughts? What advice would you give writers that are just now starting out?
Just sit down and start typing. And just let your fingers go. I kind of, that's what I do most of the time is the Christmas story. That was the only time I've ever like written backwards, but usually what I do, other than the novel that I'm working on, if I'm doing a short story, I sit down and close out everything and just start going. And that seems to work okay.
What about you, Carrie? Any advice you'd give based on maybe some of this to the new writers?
I have to push back a bit. I don't know my characters at all when I start. I meet them when I start. It's a character in a setting with a problem. I don't know them at all. So you don't have to, people can, but you don't, I don't have to, we don't.
I still feel you get to know your characters. My characters have a single purpose for their existence, where your characters are kind of an open world sandbox. My characters are old video games. They have to run a single pitfall. They got to run a single route. That's the best analogy I can think of at the moment.
Okay. My best advice is I'm with Susan, sit down and write. Have fun. Have fun is hugely important. And as far as another story that I really want to mention, it's in the same collection as Mrs. Todd's Shortcut in Skeleton Crew, is one called The Reach, like you reach for something. It is one of the loveliest, most literary, just romantic, just the most incredible story. The Reach is another one you could read over and over and over, and you'll see something different every time. And I'm not sure, again, I've been reading it since 1985. I'm still not sure I'm completely clear on what that story's about. And it's one of my favorite stories, layer upon layer upon layer. And Stephen King is a one draft writer. He writes straight through. I mean, of course, we cycle back out,
Yeah.
Proofreading and stuff.
he's not a plot ahead, and some people are plot ahead writers. There's no issue. Kevin J. Anderson plots ahead, but something just so lyrical and lovely as The Reach and Mrs. Todd Shortcut are just straight through. And Chris Rush never plots ahead.
There's another really interesting book of shorter stories. It's called Burnt Tongues by the guy who wrote Fight Club, and I'll butcher his name up, Chuck something.
Burnt Tongues is Richard Thomas. We've had classes in person. We had class with Richard in Transylvania.
Okay.
So we know Richard.
Oh man! Well, if you meet the guy again, I'm giving you my copy to get it signed. But that's
I've got a signed copy right over here.
Because that's awesome. But that was a great. That was a great.
Brought that up.
That was a great book too. What about you, Peggy?
Well, I guess I'm kind of in the middle. Like the short story I'm writing, the little girl popped in my head, and as I wrote, then I developed more about her. But then what I will do is go back and in my mind, whether it's in the short story or not, I will think about her more. I will come up with, what her day is, who takes care of her, who her friends are, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
My problem, in short story writing, you have to write who you are. But I struggle when I reread what I've written, try to read it like a reader's read it. Have I told them enough or have I told them too much about whatever it is I'm trying to say?
And that's an important reason why beta readers have two or
Yeah,
three beta readers that can read and give you constructive feedback. That's always been important. Speaking of beta readers, let me go to Crockett because Crockett still has to send me something he wanted me to read and haven't gotten it yet.
yeah.
But Crockett, what anything you've picked up on today? Or
Well, I will say that I have learned a lot. I'm still trying to find. Well, calm down. I'm still trying to figure out, where I don't. I think I'm kind of with you on the whole. I can write from any perspective. I don't have to have the ending in insight. Like it can be, it can come to me right on the as soon as I write it. Like I feel that.
okay, yeah. Thanks, Susan, for being on here. She had to drop off. Um, but I guess it's one thing. I guess people have their own methods, but it doesn't mean you can't combine all kinds. The point is to write how you're comfortable writing, and if any of these methods are helpful, if you don't know where to start, try one, then try another, then try another. Eventually, you're going to settle on something that's going to be comfortable for you as you write. Linda, I'm going to kick it to you and give you the final word today before we wrap up. Oh, Jason wants to jump in.
Oh, I was
Well,
just
no,
gonna-
he doesn't have to be first. Just
yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Linda. Sorry.
Well, I have virtually nothing to say because, as I said to start with, I'm not a short story writer. I try sometimes, and I think it just doesn't fit my style. They always I mean, I read the good ones, that have been around for a long time, and my favorite, both Jason and Peggy will appreciate this, is The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien, which is a Vietnam War thing, and I go back and read that one occasionally, but they always seem very literary to me. And I don't think I get in the right mindset for them. So I mean, it was useful what we heard tonight. I don't know if I can, I've had a couple of short stories published, and I've had one that won a contest, and I've had them in anthologies. And all of the ones that work best come from my novels. They're little side views of people in my novel.
Yeah.
So they're people I know extremely well. I know them so well that I think, you know, what what I actually have a book called In Between Murders. That's it is a collection of short stories actually, but it's what my characters do when there's no murder to work on
Oh,
from that series.
yeah. What's
You
Julie and
know?
I doing? Like when she's at some downtime? That'd be kind of interesting to know.
Yeah, so it's
Uh,
all, and it's even from the standpoint of the other characters who are not necessarily voiced in the novels, but they're doing something in between these murders, right? So, it's
yeah, and it's nice you
but
picked up on that.
that doesn't feel creative like the stuff you all do. So,
What
so
are you kidding me?
that
that's
sounds
really
wildly. I would
creative.
read that.
Yeah.
Oh,
You're telling me this really cool thing you do, and you say you're not a short story writer.
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm calling that.
I don't feel like one, and
Okay, that's a different
it's
thing.
how
You know,
it's how you feel, and I don't think of myself as a plotter, and I spend a lot of time developing characters, but those are for works that, can be 100,000 words, and I need to
you know, but
know.
I've stolen that very thing that you've done though, because with my Gonzo Chronicles stuff that I write, there's a kind of novellas, right? They're longer. But then we do these writing prompts, and sometimes like I'll look at something like I kind of just don't feel the prompt, but hey, I'm gonna write a Gonzo, my character Barry from these stories. I'm gonna write a fan fiction of my own character with these things, and I've gotten about 10 short stories. I'm gonna punch them up into short stories, so I already have them in a document now. So I'm going to do a short story collection of this idiot what he's doing when he's not on a case. Um, because like just crazy things happen, right? And life, like Ferris Bueller said, life comes at you pretty fast. If you don't pay attention once in a while, you might miss something. So those are the moments I think that sort of capture, like Julie and I, when she's not doing, she's working. I think works. All right, Jason, I'll shut up and give you the last word here before we close up today.
That's great. The side stories. Carrie's written a collection of side
A
stories.
couple of
Chris
collections.
Rush
Hmm.
does collections because I've only written the one novella, but these were the characters already existed in the world. They were developed characters. They and they all knew each other, all that stuff. And I wrote a short story about how they met, how they got together, and
Mhm.
because I want to know how did these people meet? How did they end up in this situation? Um, so yeah, short stories. I knew how things ended up, but I didn't know the ending of that particular short story. I knew they all ended up becoming a club, becoming a Ocean's 11 type bunch. Um, but yeah, short stories are great because short stories to me are the ultimate what if. Well, what if this really weird thing and The World According to Garp. I haven't read the book, but the movie has a
That's
great
good.
scene in it where Garp is walking down the street, sees some gloves in the gutter, sees him moving a piano, lifting a piano up to an upper floor, and sees a couple arguing, and bam, he's got the short story. Because the Stephen King calls it the pal.
Yeah,
You know,
that's one of the best pieces in On Writing. Stephen King talks about two things that just collide, and your brain goes pow, and there's your story.
yeah,
And there was a wonderful one of my favorite movies, Stranger Than Fiction, is such a writer movie. And there's a moment in Stranger Than Fiction when an apple rolls on a sidewalk, and it's just the most chill-inducing of the writer going, it's so good.
I
yeah,
saw the weirdest, and you may have seen this a long time ago. I was a kid and I saw this. I think I snuck in to watch like late night TV on HBO or something when nobody's watching. And it was these little short stories, these little short films. And this guy was sitting on the bench next to the lake. He's throwing the line in. He's fishing. He's like, caught a fish or two and had some on a stringer. And he's sitting there, and this apple comes flying up out of the water, and it lands next to him in the grass. And he leans over, picks it up, looks around, wipes it on his pant leg, and takes a bite. Then takes another bite, and his hook comes through. And next thing you know, he's being pulled into the water. And I thought, wow, not one word was said. But whoever wrote that, I thought, man, that is wild stuff. I mean, but yeah, you see this guy. I can still see this guy grabbing the line, fighting, and getting pulled in. Um, this is weird stuff. Some of the craziest stories can come and that people remember for whatever reason.
and you're talking about writing prompts. One of our favorite things, and we both did this one, and ended up with such different things. The Everybody had to start with the opening line. The wolves were howling on Cornell Street again. Everyone had to start with that line and write a story.
Our stories are so different.
Wow, Peggy, we've never tried that method. Right, start with a line.
We're probably going to do a Kickstarter in January. They do a thing called Make 100 every January,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to pick 50 of the prompts that we've both written stories from and put them together
Yeah.
because they're so different.
That's cool.
And we do it all.
We have different styles, Carrie and I do.
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
So if nothing else, I hope from this video that people are watching online, you get the fact that like writing is fun. I mean, it can be personal, it can be grueling if you want it to be, but like it can be therapy, it can be whatever you want it to be because it's your time, whatever method you use. Writing prompts are a great way to get short story compilations. I've gotten I've done over 200 of these things now. Over going into the third year, so I've done a lot, and I've gotten, I don't know, probably 20 or 30 of these prompts are worthy enough to be punched up and made into a short story. So I've got a compilation book I'm working on now based on some of the prompts that we've been doing for a while. So you can't write that many prompts and not come up with some good stuff. I mean, some of it sucks. Like, I'm not going to lie to you. Some I send out, I'm like, I'm kind of embarrassed to send that. Peggy's going to read that. Like, whatever. but they're fun to do. And some are real good. Some turn out really, really good. But thanks, everybody. I appreciate everybody doing this tonight. And I'm glad we got a chance to record and share this with the Authors Guild. So anybody watching, whether you're a guild member or not, join a local guild where you're at. If you're in our region, check us out at AppalachianAuthors.com. And there's several guilds in the region anyway. But make sure you join one, get to know some fellow writers, encourage yourselves. It's fun. But all right, I guess if I'll go ahead and stop recording now. But thanks again, everybody, and we'll see you on the next meeting.